Hi, this is the Unearther cardigan, the Western cardigan, and it's a bright colourwork cardigan, and it's structured with a set-in sleeve, and most of this video is going to be about how that sleeve is created. We're still missing one sleeve, so in this video we're going to solve that problem and put the second sleeve onto the cardigan to show you how it's done, because the most complicated part of this cardigan, not that it's that complicated, it's actually quite easy, is getting the shaping right around the shoulder. Before we jump into actually putting the sleeve on, moving it over to the table and picking up the ball of yarn and actually putting the sleeve on, I just wanted to quickly cover a couple of points about construction techniques in general and styling of this cardigan. So the cardigan is styled to be a figure flattering, tailored set-in sleeve style. So the sleeve conforms to the line of the body. Unlike lots of cardigans and jumpers will have a drop shoulder, which visually moves your shoulder out into your arm and makes you look wider than you are. This is designed to be more figure flattering because it actually follows the real lines of your body and therefore looks more flattering on you. But that's where this little bit of complexity at the top comes in. Turning the corner, it's a bit like turning the heel of a sock, but it's really quite easy. So bear with me and I'll show you how to do that. It's a colourwork cardigan and it's styled for any body type really, but there are different things that you can do with it to make it suit you. So I made this prototype. It's one size too small for me because it's the prototype the magazine wants. It's supposed to be, it's styled to be just a little bit more generous than that. I shouldn't be having to pull and tug to get it to reach the middle. If I am making myself one size up and it fits much more nicely. But it's styled to be gender neutral, so we're in very feminine colours here. The one I'm making for myself is similar, but if you did this in a very different masculine colourway, it could be for anybody. It's styled for any body type, but it's particularly good for people with my kind of body type, where I'm very, very broad across the shoulders, large and busty on top, and then fade down into nothing. I'm very skinny, absent hips and nothing back there. So the typical drop shoulder sweater or the typical round sweater with all the patterning up here tends not to suit me because it makes me look even bigger on top where I'm already big. So this solves that problem by pulling everything into where it really sits on the body and making me look a little bit narrower on top, which gives me fake a little bit wider on the hips where I need to be. However, if your figure type isn't the same as mine, you could tweak the pattern in just a couple of tiny little ways to make it suit you. If you're the opposite to me, if you're more pear-shaped and wider around the hips and slender and narrow up on top, whatever size you are, I'm talking about body shape here, and it carries through for every size, from extra small to 5XL. It's your body shape that matters most in how you look. Now, a pear-shaped lady would look absolutely great in this cardigan and show off their waistline if they simply left out the second panel. So that's colourwork panel A, use that. That's colourwork panel B, use that. And stop there, which brings you just to a waist on an average height person. I am 5'7" if you're interested. And that ends there. You can have a little waisty cardigan, and if you're more pear-shaped, that will be really, really, really nice on your figure. You can also add one or two, you can repeat these panels as often as you like. If you want to emphasize height and make yourself look taller and slimmer by looking taller, you can make it into a duster cardigan by repeating either of these two panels as often as you like to bring it all the way down to the knee even or below if you so wished, and that would also look great. You can also do the sleeves like I've done them here, but if you were doing a little shorty cardigan, if you were leaving out that panel, you could consider a short sleeve to match, and you could end the sleeve here, or you could end the sleeve after the first couple of rows that I'm about to show you. So you just create a pretty little sleeve cap so you don't have a raw edge like that, and then don't put a sleeve on. And that in particular suits people who are broader lower down than they are up top. For people like myself that are much broader up here, we want to bring the eye down, so a full length sleeve tends to be more figure flattering. So with that said, no more ado, I'm going to move it over to the table and I'm going to start showing you how we're going to put the missing sleeve on. This is the stitch we're going to use. It's a wide double crochet stitch. If you use UK or European terms, you might call that a wide treble crochet stitch. This is a normal double crochet stitch. So how is it different? It's only different in one tiny little respect in where we put the hook. Although we can see that the end result is a little bit different. So the wide double, these two swatches are the same number of stitches and same number of rows, and we can see that the wide double crochet is much wider. The swatch comes out wider because the stitches are being pushed further apart, so they're wider, but because of that it's also shorter. So the normal double crochet swatch of the same number of stitches and rows, it becomes taller. Now, why not just use this stitch? Well, the answer to that question is because the wide double crochet comes out better for colour work, because it is better at trapping the carried colours of the tapestry crochet technique neatly in between. So when we just look at this swatch, front and back, it's nice and neat on both sides, and there's no strands of yarn poking through disrupting the way it looks. If we take a really close look, we can just see there, I don't know how much you can see, there's a good point, you can see just there, we've carried the strands of wool through and caught them underneath, but because the way the stitch is formed, you can't see that much, and after a bit of blocking you can hardly see it at all. So it makes for very easy, neat colour work, and this is what we're aiming for. So that's it in a single swatch. That's the same chart on the back yoke, and it becomes easy and neat to do. So let's get down to business. We're using our yarn. The yarn for this pattern is, I think you say Sheepsies, I don't know, but this brand in Merino Soft in a number of colorways, and the colorway we're using for the swatches is the pink one. Here's some of the other colors we use for this pattern. They're really, I just love this color. It's really my color zone there. It's a gorgeous one. So this is the yarn we're using. We're using 4mm Furls crochet hooks. If we're using a different crochet hook, like a metal crochet hook, you would probably want to go up to a 4.5 because a 4.5, because I find Furls crochet hooks give a slightly looser tension than a similar hook of the same size. So I would get the same tension on the 4 Furls, I would get 4.5 on a normal hook. You may also want to go down one size when doing the bands, the hem here, the cuff on the end of the sleeve. You may or may not, it's up to you, you can experiment, but you may want to go down. So if you're using a 4mm Furls hook for the main body, you may want to experiment with a 3.5 for a nice neat hem and cuff and the other little details like that. You may also want to go down a size when doing the arm where there's no color work, but we will talk about that a little bit more in a minute. It depends completely on your tension and whether you find that when you're doing the color work it makes your tension a lot tighter. I find my color work gets a little bit tighter. So you'll see here on the sleeve where there's no color work involved, it kind of balloons out very slightly. Now I thought that was actually a little bit attractive. I thought it was quite nice to have just a tiny bit of balloon on the sleeve, but if you don't like that effect, or if it happens too much for you, you can simply go down a size of hook for the sleeve section where there's no color work, but there is color work throughout the rest of the cardigan. So the wide double crochet is made the exact same way as a normal double crochet, except that we will go between the posts of the previous stitch instead of into the normal stitch. So there's the 2 loops at the top of the normal stitch where we normally put our hook under, and the 1 loop left behind which normally sits under the hook like that. But for a wide double crochet we catch all 3 of those above our hook by going between the 2 posts. So under the 2 posts and make the stitch. So in every other way, the exact same as a normal double crochet, but just underneath all 3 loops between the 2 posts. So yarn on over, between the 2 posts, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. It's a double crochet, but it's just going in at a lower position and pushing the 2 posts between it apart. Yarn over, through the posts, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. Do it one more time. Yarn over, between the 2 posts, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. And that is a wide double crochet. So to make a wide half double crochet, it's the same between the 2 posts and otherwise a normal half double crochet. To make a wide single crochet, between the 2 posts, but otherwise a single crochet, just like that. So we'll take those out and go to the end because we need to focus on the end stitch now. So I will quickly do a row of wide double crochets. So here we are on the last stitch of the row. We've just gone between the final 2 posts, and our first stitch went between the first 2 posts. So if we stopped there, we'd be missing 1 stitch. Our stitch count would have dropped by 1. We need to make 1 more stitch, but we've gone between the last 2 posts. So our very final stitch needs to be in the top of that. Our final stitch of the whole row cannot be a wide stitch because there isn't an extra post to go between. So instead of doing a double crochet, which would come up slightly too tall, I do a half double crochet in that final stitch. Actually counts as the last wide double crochet when it comes to stitch counts. And that's a row of wide double crochet. To do the first stitch of the row, the technique I like the most to use, I call a foundation turning chain, which is what Bella Coco and other designers and teachers call it, where I learned it from, and it's just like that. It looks exactly like a normal stitch and it acts exactly like a normal stitch, and it keeps a lovely straight edge. Now I will just show you how it's made. Go back. We go in between the 2 sets of posts because it's a wide stitch. We make a single crochet. And now, because that's still slightly too short, we need to be at the height of a wide double crochet or a half double crochet. I'm going to make another single crochet on top of that one by going into the side there. I go into the side and I make another single crochet. So I've now piled 1 single crochet on top of another single crochet, and that gives me a first stitch of my row that is going to look and behave and seem exactly like all the others. And that stitch always counts as a stitch because it is a stitch and it acts just like all the others, and it gives me a perfectly straight edge for picking up for button bands and things like that. Whereas a turning chain and then a stitch wouldn't be able to give me as neat and perfect an edge as that. So we have our wide double crochets. We have our last stitch always goes in through that final stitch as a half double crochet. We have our foundation turning chain to be our first stitches of each row. Now to do a decrease. The way I do the decreases on this, I'll just show you really carefully. Yarn over through the 2, pull through.
yarn over again straight away. I don't go through those. Just yarn over again straight away into the next one. Yarn over, pull through. So I now have 5 loops on the hook. So I now pull through 4 loops. Now I've got 2 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through. The reason I do it that way for this particular pattern is it makes much more of a cluster. It makes like a cluster stitch. It makes a really tight, neat little bundle out of our 2 together. And that can be important coming back the next row if the 2 posts, if the 2 legs of the 2 together stitch are too far apart and you're just going into each gap automatically watching telly while you crochet, it can be too easy to pick up a stitch again by accident and undo your decrease. When you make your decreases like that, so that you're making them like a cluster together on this particular pattern, it is helpful because you're not going to accidentally go between those 2 because they're not 2 separate legs, it's just one tight little cluster. So it's a good way to do the decreases on this pattern. So I'm just going to show you again really quickly. Yarn over through the gap, yarn over, pull through, yarn over through the gap, yarn over, pull through, 5 loops on the hook, pull through 4 of them, yarn over, pull through the last 2, and I've got my tight little cluster and a stitch. So where I had 2 stitches, I've now got 1. So that's how we do wide DC 2 tog for this particular pattern. If you want to use a different method, you can. Just watch out if you use a different method of doing your 2 togethers and it gives you 2 distinct legs, that you don't accidentally undo the decrease by working between them on the next row. The next stitch I'm going to show you, I'm going to turn and go up here. I'm going to do an SC, HDC, wide DC. Now, when we're doing the sleeve shaping, we sometimes use short rows like that, where we turn and go back and then turn and come back again without finishing a row in order to build up the shaping around the shoulder. When that happens, we sometimes, not very often, but occasionally, need to use a 2 together stitch, which is on 2 layers. We want to come down and pick up a stitch down here, but we've got this stitch up here and we need to work them 2 together. So we're going to do a stitch called a single crochet, double crochet, 2 together. I know that sounds like a mouthful, but please don't be frightened of it. We're going to start as if we were doing a single crochet 2 together. So just hook through, yarn over. We're not going to finish the stitch. We're going to yarn over again, and now we're going to go down there as if it was a double crochet 2 together. So we started it as if it was a single crochet 2 together, and we finished it as if it was a double crochet 2 together. And now we have 2 legs of our 2 together stitch, a short one going there and a long one going there, and we have evened out the fact that some of our work was up on a lip and others weren't, and we've brought in a stitch from down here. So that hopefully won't seem too horribly complicated. It's probably the most complicated stitch in the whole pattern, and as soon as you've done it once or twice, it stops being all that intimidating. I'm going to do it one more time to just let you see. So we've got a single crochet here, and we've got a skipped stitch down here from the previous row where we turned and didn't complete that on the last row. I'm going to start like a single crochet, so yarn through, I'll try that again. Start like a single crochet, hook through without any yarn over. Now, yarn over and pull through. Don't finish the stitch, yarn over. Go down to the first completely unworked row from when we turned. Hook through, yarn over, pull through. We've 4 loops on the hook. Pull through 2, yarn over, pull through the last 3. We have a single crochet and a double crochet worked into one stitch, so they're a single crochet, double crochet, 2 together. So that's it. That's the most difficult stitch in the whole pattern, and it is as simple as that. So now I'm going to pull this out, a little bit of fun frogging there, and I'm going to show you the color work. We're now going to pick up our second color, and we're going to start, except this time it's going to be pink background and green, mint green little diamond, but we're going to start one of these little diamonds to show you how the color work is done, which is the whole point of this pattern and the really fun bit. So I'm going to lie my extra color there, and I'm going to use it from every stitch after the first stitch. So I'm going to do this first stitch again. There's my single crochet. There's my second single crochet into the side of it. That's my foundation turning chain. Now I'm going to pick up the mint and I'm going to hold it at the back. So I'm just holding it in my hands there. It's just caught between my fingers and it's just in place. Now I'm going to do a normal wide double crochet, but I'm going to make sure that that strand of mint is included, so it's just getting caught in place. I'm not crocheting with it yet, I'm just catching it in place so it's held there behind the stitch, and it's just, you could pull that out if you wanted, but you shouldn't, just leave it there. It's not going to go anywhere. Without a really strong tug, it's not going to come out, and it's just held there. Now I'm going to do another stitch, and each stitch I do, it becomes more secure, and it's just being held to the back of the work. Now on the next stitch I want to do my last pink stitch, and when I do my last pink stitch I stop before the end when I've still got 2 loops on the hook. I drop my pink and I pick up my mint, yarn over, pull through. Now why am I doing that on the last pink stitch? Because this loop that's now on the hook is actually going to be the loop that's over the next stitch, and I want the next stitch to be green, so I do it that way. Now this time it's the pink I'm catching under my fingers to make sure it gets caught up like that. Pull through. Now I stop because I'm going to go back to pink, so I drop my mint, I pick up my pink, and I pull through on the last pull through of that stitch. So now I'm ready to go in pink. Because when we crochet, that loop that stays on the hook when we've done a stitch is actually the top of the next stitch. So as you can see now, everything's lined up perfectly. So the pink stitch has a pink top, the green stitch has a green top, the pink stitch has a pink top, but the top is always the last loop of the previous stitch. So you always do your pull through in the color of the next stitch. And you just keep the yarn held to the back and just always make sure it gets caught as you're doing your stitch. And when we do right side rows like this, there's absolutely nothing to it. It will just get caught there automatically if you're holding it in place, and it will just sit there like that and nothing. It's very neat, it's very tidy, it's very easy. When we do the wrong side rows, I'm going to stop here and turn just to make it easy to show you. I'm going to do my foundation turning chain again. 2 little single crochets nested on top of each other. Now I'm going to catch that strand of mint and bring it along like that. When we do our wrong side rows, we hold the yarn facing us. So on the right side row, we held it to the back. On the wrong side row, we hold it facing us. Now this is just very slightly more tricky, because I find that on the wrong side rows, sometimes the yarn takes on a mind of its own and it wants to go off on a wee wander and it wants to go off and have an adventure over there. We don't want that to happen. We want it to stay on this side. So it always gets trapped to the what will be the back of the work and can't be seen. I made a mistake there because I want to change color here. So now I stop 2 before the end. I drop my pink to the side facing me because this is the wrong side row, pull through. Now I'm going to do 2 greens, 1, and I'm catching that yarn to this side, and I make sure it's staying on this side, and then I change color again. And now I'm good to go the rest of the way in pink. And I'm keeping my thumb on that strand of yarn to make sure it's always staying here on this side where I want it to be. You don't need to think about that at all with the right side rows. It just stays where you want it, I found. But on these wrong side rows, you have to kind of stop and think about it occasionally and make sure it's in the right place, because it will sometimes flop over to the other side of the work. And then we do our final stitch into the top. We do our HDC, counts as a wide DC, but it's actually a HDC into that last loop. Chain 1 and turn. Foundation turning chain. I don't catch my stranded yarn into the foundation turning chain. I find it better. It sits more neatly if it just comes up the inside second stitch. So I'm going to pull it up here. And now I'm going to make sure it's caught. And I'm going to work my wide double crochets down to where I'm working my little diamond pattern. This is going to be my last pink stitch, because I'm going to have 3 this time. So this one is going to be a mint. So this will be my last pink. So I stop now, switch colors, use the mint, and do 3 mint. My pink is getting caught very easily to the back of my work. 2, so this is one where I'll change color again because this is the 3rd mint. So I'll switch back to pink. And there we go. And it's just sitting to the back of the work very, very nicely. And then when we get to the last stitch of the row, we remember to do our HDC into the top. Oops, sorry about that. There we go. And that's a 3rd row done, and you can see how the color working starts to shape up. We have our stitch marker from when we made our shoulders. So we started here, we worked up the back, then we did our short rows around the shoulders and down the yoke, and we left a stitch marker there in the only row where we used single crochet stitches, and it's still there. So that's giving us the center point. Now we fold the garment over like that, and now we've got the center point of the armpit down here. We pop our crochet hook in and we start picking up stitches to go around, up and down again. And the color we use is the darker one. We're going to join our wool, and we are going to work single crochets around 1.5 times. So we're going to go the full way around once, and then we're going to start a 2nd row, but we're going to stop when we get to the top. So to have a look at how we do this, we're using either the same size hook as we used for the main body, or if you find that your tension is much looser when you're not doing color work, you can also go down a size if you wish. We're just going for across the underarm chain, we're just doing our wide single crochets. So we're going between each 2 set of posts and making a single crochet. When we get past those stitches, we can't continue to do that. There's all our wide single crochets done. Now, along the side of the arm, we've got to go into the side of the rows. And how many stitches we go in varies, because the first one we do 1 single crochet. The second one we do 2 single crochets. Then we do 1 single crochet. Then we do 2 single crochets. And we keep that cycle up all the way along, so that for every 2 rows, we're creating 3 stitches. That's because those 2 rows in length are the same size as 3 stitches in width. So we keep an eye on what we're doing. Right, that was 2 in the last one, 1 in this, 2 in the next one,
1 in this, and we keep going until we reach the row before that stitch marker, because if you remember when we were working the shoulder, we did slightly different stitches there. So we did a HDC, an SC, a HDC. So we'll just put 1 in those 3, and that stitch marker, we don't have to keep count, that stitch marker will tell us when we get to that point. So I'm just going to go up to there. See you there. So here we are back around at the beginning. So we're going to finish as we started the round, and we're going to work a wide single crochet between the 2 posts around, just like that. And we're going to join with a slip stitch because this is a round. However, we're going to work short rows. So we're going to be back to working in rows. I can't do my slip stitch because of the awkward angle I'm standing at holding the work under the camera. Sorry, there we go. I'm not normally clumsy with my crochet like that. Now, we're going to do, we did 1 round, and the sleeve from here will be worked in rounds, but this bit we're going to work short rows. So the first short row, we're going to only work as far as that stitch marker, or a few stitches before it actually. Now we have done our single crochet around our second row up to the point, coming close to our stitch marker that shows us the center of the shoulder. And we have 5 stitches left, which is correct for the first 5 sizes. Bigger sizes need to check because they stop more stitches before that point. Our next stitch is a half double crochet, and then we do 8 double crochet. 1, 2, 3, 4, that over, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now we do a half double and we do a single. We chain 1 and we turn, because this is where the magic is about to start with shaping our shoulder. So we leave that there for 1 second. So now we're going to work back a second row across this row that's already done while leaving those stitches unworked, and we're going to use a very similar rhythm. We're going to do a single crochet, we're going to do a half double crochet, then we're going to do 2 together. Make sure I'm going into the right stitch. There we go. So that's the 2 together I showed you under special stitches to make sure it didn't get 2 legs. And now I do 4. Check your pattern for how many to do, because it's different for the different sizes, but for this size that I'm working, it's 4. And now I repeat what I did. I do a half double crochet and a single crochet. So I had done single crochet stitches up to there, and then I had started these built up bigger stitches, and now I've worked back across those built up bigger stitches. So I'm now at the end of my second short row. Now I chain 1 and I turn, and this is where we're starting to build up the work, so it's going to come down the arm. But you'll really see over the next couple of rows how that shaping is going to take shape. So I have chained 1, I do a single crochet, I do a half double, I do double crochets for the right number of stitches for my size. Now on our last 2 stitches we do a half double crochet. Now this is where we did a single crochet the last time, and instead this is where we're going to do our slightly peculiar single crochet, double crochet 2 together. So I'm not going to go into that stitch because it's already got a stitch going into it from the previous row. I'm going to go into this next stitch and pick up that first stitch from that row, and I'm going to do a 2 together. So I've got my single crochet leg and my double crochet leg, but it's become one stitch. Now I do a half double crochet, and now I do a single crochet. So I have picked up 3 of the abandoned stitches from the previous row, and I will do that every row from now on. And now I repeat and repeat. And can you see the shoulder start to turn? It's just starting to turn there. It can't go out like that because we're shaping it. We'll keep doing that all the way down the arm. So I do my single crochet, my half double, my double, watching those funny increases that we don't mistake them, 2 together, double across to 2 stitches before the end of the last row, starting to get tied up there we go. Now at 2 stitches before the end of the previous row, I do a half double. I'm starting to bring my stitches down smaller. Now I put the start of a single there, but I finish it as a double down there. So I'm doing a 2 tog stitch with a single and a double. And now I go half double crochet and single crochet to work in 2 of the previously unworked stitches. So with every row of the arm, as we go over and back, over and back, over and back down across, we're going to be doing a decrease on this side as just a DC2 tog, and we're going to be doing that strange decrease on this side, which is the single double 2 together. We're also going to be picking up 3 stitches from the previously unworked stitches. So each row is going to be 1 stitch count longer than the row before it, and they're going to get bigger and bigger, and these stitches around the outside are going to progressively disappear as we bring this down, attaching it to the edges as we go. Now at some point, if you wanted to do a sleeveless short cardigan, we were talking when we did earlier in the video about somebody might want to do a short one that length to be trendy and short and suit different figure styles. And if you wanted to do something like that, you wouldn't necessarily need to bring your sleeve much more than that. You could do that much sleeve to just neaten up the sleeve edge and have a little tiny shoulder cap to just look very cute. You could even hang fringes off it. If you were going to do that, when you got to this side, you would want to do a row of wide double crochet all the way around once, the whole way around, which is what we're going to do on the end for those we do with a full sleeve. So that's just an adaptation you could consider if you wanted just a cute little sleeve cap with or without a fringe on it for a sleeveless short version. But here we're doing the longer version and we're putting the full sleeve on it. So we're going to keep going and we're going to keep doing that until we get all the way down here and we have our whole sleeve cap made. And at that point we will look at how to put the arm on it. So I will join you when we're nearly down here. So we have now finished the short rows for the sleeve. That's what they look like when they're all done. So the arm will go through there, and there's our shoulder, and it's all nicely shaped. And we're now going to join the sleeve to work in the round. So we've done our final short row and we've done our final joining stitches here to take up the last stitches of the skipped stitches, and we're at the underarm chain. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to continue back to the middle and work single crochet stitches for 4 stitches for this size, the ones that were skipped from the row we didn't finish. We were there, hang on now.
and then we join with a slip stitch. Here we are back to our first single crochet we did when we started long ago, before those short rows. And now we're ready to work in rounds. So I'm going to do my foundation turning chain. I do a single crochet, and then I do another single crochet into the side of that single crochet, and now my stitch is up at the right height. Now I'm going to do double crochet stitches into those first few single crochets. Trying to hold it up. It's a very awkward angle I'm standing at, I'm afraid, but there we go. So there's our double crochets into the single crochets, and now we are around to where we're reaching the sleeve stitches. So now we can switch to wide double crochets because we've got stitches to go between. We might need to just do normal double crochets for those first few where they're an odd shape. And now we can do our wide double crochets, and we do our first couple of rounds just in the round, just like that. So we're just doing our double crochets as normal, as you can see, and we're going to go all the way around until we're back at the beginning of the round. So here we are back at the beginning of the round, and we're going to join with a slip stitch. Now we're going to do another foundation turning chain, but I want to just quickly show you how to keep the seam that goes up under the armhole completely straight, because if we always go in the same place, so I went forward the last time, so if I went forward and did my foundation turning chain there, what would happen would be, there's my last one, here's my next one, the next one will be there, and then there, and then there, and the seam would head off on a little journey of its own at an angle. So what I can do instead is I can angle my hook backwards, and I can put my first stitch there instead. But if I always do that, they'll always be offset in that direction, and the seam will go off that way. So we can choose between a seam which is at an angle that way, or a seam that is at an angle that way. Or what we can do is we can simply alternate and always watch. So the last stitch I went forward. I'm going to go back and show you again. The first stitch after I joined in the round, when I did my foundation turning chain, I went in front of my, there's my joined slip stitch. The last time I went in front, and I did it like that. So because I went in front the last time, this time I'm going to go behind. I'm going to angle my hook very slightly back, and I'm going to go in where I actually did the stitch. I've got my foundation turning chain. Now I go into that stitch, now I go around. And for the rest of the sleeve, I'm going to alternate between those two. And that's going to keep the seam down the center of the sleeve perfectly straight. Now, if you want to move your crochet up another few levels, you can look up invisible joins. There are a few different techniques, many of which are absolutely fantastic. For this pattern, I felt going even more complicated than that wasn't necessary. You'll just about be able to see the seam when it's done, but that seam is going to run down the inside of the arm, so it's not ever going to be visible when you're wearing it. So I didn't feel that going even more complicated with an invisible seam was necessary. I felt just keeping it straight is more than enough. So I'm going to go around this round, and then we're going to go into the next piece of color work. And now we've finished round 2. So I'm going to join with a slip stitch, and I'm going to make my next foundation turning chain. So I went back, I angled back the last time, I angle forward this time. And we have the beginnings. You can see there's just a tiny step there and then there. But now I'm going to start stranding my next color. So I take my next color. You don't have to necessarily put this band in place. Hang on, I'm being stupid. Let me put that back on and use the center pull. I don't know why I did that. So here's our second color, because we're now going to put the little decorative band at the top of the arms. It depends how much yarn you have of each color and whether you're destashing or not. You can do the arm all in one color, also looks fantastic. But here we're going to do the next color chart and change colors and work down the main arm in this color. So the next color chart is 4 stitches wide. It's 3 stitches in this. Let's go back. And in a few places throughout the pattern, you'll see that that foundation turning chain counts as a stitch. So we've got our 3 stitches. It depends on your size. You might be instructed to do 1 stitch there before going into it. And now we do our first stitch in the second color, and we go around 3 and 1, 3 and 1 for this particular color chart. For the first row of it, it's a small easy color chart. It's just 3 rows, and then we change color and we continue around this round in that way, working our color chart. 3 and 1, 3 and 1 all the way